Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 257 for the 22nd of September 2013. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. On this week's show, I speak to a scientist who wants to die on Mars. Well, he wants to go to Mars, and part of the deal is, if you go to Mars, you don't come back. I'm going to be speaking to a friend of mine, Besh Saab, who's currently working in Switzerland, about his hope and goal to travel to Mars on a one-way trip. What an interesting thing to do. That's coming up at the top of the show. Following that, it's a week in science with our good friends from the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au. And this week's Week in Science is read by Dr. Paul Willis, and I'm delighted to say I've just learned that Dr. Paul Willis will be attending and speaking at the National Skeptics Convention in November in Canberra. And you've only got about a week left before the early bird tickets disappear. If you want to come to the National Skeptics Convention in Canberra in November, here Dr. Paul Willis and many other fine people run to nationalskepticsconvention.org. Now is the time to book those tickets. Following a week in science, it's Maynard's Spooky Action. Maynard will also be at the National Skeptics Convention. He's trying to find out some interesting and fun things to do, sort of special, extracurricular, you might say, activities. Anyway, more about that soon. But Maynard's back with Spooky Action with a follow-up interview with Dr. Pamela Gay, who was only in Sydney last weekend. Now, this was recorded at a special Skeptics in the Pub, and after Maynard speaks to Pamela, he's going to be speaking to some people at the pub. And to round off the show, it's the horoscope, your horoscope for September, with our astrologer, Dr. Duaf Ekaf. Yeah, can't wait for that. Before we start the show, I must say how much I've been enjoying watching the Curiosity Show DVDs. If you go to curiosityshow.com.au and click the YouTube link, wow, such wonderful memories from the 1980s. How to do things, how to make things. And my nephews and nieces are now absolutely enjoying learning so much from the Curiosity Show. It's fantastic. If you've got young children, you could do a lot worse than visiting curiosityshow.com.au. Learn how to make things, how things work. Really good stuff. But for now, I'm going to run downstairs, open up the pantry, grab a couple of Mum's famous peanut butter cookies. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm doing that. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Now, you may have once thought to yourself, wouldn't it be nice to visit another planet, just like in the movies? Jump into a spaceship and visit another planet and come home. Well, I'm going to be talking to a man in the moment who has the same sort of dream, except forget about the coming home part. See, I'm talking to a man now who wants to go to Mars, which may be a possibility. On the line, all the way from Switzerland, is a friend of mine who I met in the Czech Republic earlier in the year, Besh Saab. Hello, Besh.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm not doing too badly at the moment. I mean, I'm earthbound. I'll put it that way. But before we get on to your extraordinary desire to go to another planet, I was very happy to meet you earlier in the year in the Czech Republic because we were both together at the Olomouc Film Festival, where we were on the international jury. What do you do in real life, we might say?
I'm a neuroscientist. I primarily work on investigating molecules and brain regions that underlie memory formation, as well as the drive to explore and learn. And I also am starting to get into research which examines how brains respond differentially to stress. So what is it about some people, for example, that would respond to stress in a very negative way and be impacted by stress such that they have problems in their life afterwards, whereas other people will respond to stress in very positive ways, grow from it, and in fact thrive during stressful experiences more so than when they are not being challenged.
What an interesting field of research. And I guess it really does, now I think about it, it might tie in very well with what you're hoping to achieve. And this is to be one of the, I guess you'd say one of the volunteers to travel to Mars. How on earth did you get interested in this?
It actually stems from an evening where a friend and I were lying on the beach in the summertime. This was in Toronto, or nearby Toronto. And we were lying down on the sand and falling asleep under the stars. He suggested to me at one point in time, as we're staring up at the stars and watching, things go by and so forth, and he's like, you might be a good candidate to join the space program, become an astronaut. And I had never really given much thought to being an astronaut as a career option. I mean, clearly, virtually every child dreams about the possibility of going into space. Now that we know that this is not routine, but it is certainly doable by many different nations. But I hadn't really considered it as a career opportunity until I was doing my PhD in neuroscience, and I was doing triathlons at the time, and I was quite fit, and I had done a lot of different experiences in rock climbing and all this stuff, and I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'd be a reasonable candidate. But that kind of got me thinking about the idea of going into space. And when I started to put a personal feel towards it and think of it as a career option, I was like, well, why would I do that? And I thought to myself, my research, I think, is actually more important for the planet than me going up and floating around in a little tuna can around the Earth. I didn't really see what was so important about it until I thought about how fragile our planet really is in terms of the cosmos and the universe. And then I thought, okay, well, if I were to go to space, I would only do so in order to increase the chance of life's survival, as in inhabit another planet. But at that time, I didn't really know that was really possible. But I did start getting interested in the idea. And then a friend of mine gave me this book called The Case for Mars, which is written by Robert Zubrin. And it's a really fantastic book that came out a decade ago or so. And it describes not only why we would want to go to Mars and become a multi-planet-faring species and have life distributed over 2 planets to increase our chance of survival, but it also describes how to do it in very, very practical terms using technology which has existed since the Apollo era. So Dr. Zubrin does a really good job of making it seem doable. And he breaks down everything in terms of the cost of going there and coming back and setting up a base and exactly how to be done. So I read this book with great, great interest. And then I was convinced. I was like, this can be done. And this is more important than my research. And so I should shift efforts. Well, not entirely shift efforts, but I should really keep this in mind as something for me to do as a career option. Now, at that time, there was no projects that had any sort of timeline that made them realistic in terms of a project that would actually take people to Mars. And then last year, one such project was announced. And so I became quite interested in that and have applied like 200,000 other people.
Now, I've seen your application, and what I might do now is, for our audience, is I'll play the audio from your video application, why you'd like to go to Mars.
If we believe that life is good, and that the universe and the soul of humanity are beautiful, then we have a responsibility to blast off and settle Mars in order to foster these things. Playful would best describe my sense of humor, and I tend to laugh a lot. And this contributes to me being perfectly suited for the MarsOne mission because it facilitates my abilities to adapt and endure. Living on Mars is something that I have dreamed of and have been preparing to do for a decade. After traversing various terrains and immersing myself in distinct earthly cultures, I have emerged a skilled scientist, an effective communicator, a trusting team player, physically and mentally fit and ready to take on the challenging adventure of making a new home on Mars.
Whenever it comes for me the opportunity to live on Mars.
I found out about this program called MarsOne. Day 2, 4, 6, 7, and so on. I've been making videos every day for 432 days since I found out about MarsOne to document my dedication. Because
I will go in a heartbeat.
So that was your application, Besh. But you say there's a lot of other people, and I've noticed on the website too, a lot of other people out there who want to go to Mars. Do you think you've got the edge on the others?
I don't know. Certainly, I think I'm able to make the mission succeed. I think I'm the right type of person. I think I have the right skill set. I think I have the right biological build and mental build to actually pull this off. And I have been preparing for it and thinking about it for a decade or so. And that means that I've really thought about all the things that I will leave behind and the sacrifices I will make and so forth. And I've been very real about it with my family and so forth. It's not just something that I've thought of recently and I'm like, man, that would be cool. But on top of that, I really am the kind of person that likes to be outside of my comfort zone. So you can say my comfort zone is somewhat limitless in that regard. And I do perform better when I'm challenged. And it's just kind of who I am. And I think that if I examine all the different career options that I have, to be an athlete, to be a scientist, to be a settler on Mars, I think that it's actually most suited for who I am. And for that reason, it makes sense that I apply. Am I the only person who could be described like this? I don't think so. I had never met anybody that I thought would be a good candidate to go to Mars, that wanted to go to Mars, and I still haven't met any. But I've seen some of the other applicants and their profiles and so forth, and I certainly believe that out of the 200,000 people that are applying, there must be at least another 100 or 1,000 who are like me. And so I'm quite confident that they can find suitable people to go to Mars. And whether or not I'm part of that is a secondary point, really. I mean, the really important thing is that we do go. I think I would be able to pull it off. But if I don't go, at least we went and we started this. That's far more important. And because I can do things here on Earth and I can live a wonderful life. I mean, I'm quite fond of Earth, actually. People here. So. Well, I would like to encourage people to go to the MarsOne website and take a look at the type of people who have applied. Some of them might appear to be a little bit cuckoo, but others are extremely serious and prepared to undertake this great mission. To look at the timeline that they put in and potentially even become a supporter in terms of donations or purchase some merchandise, or get in contact with them to see if there's a way you can collaborate. They really like collaborating with different educational institutions. I mean, in general, just think about what this means for not just the human race, but all of life on Earth, and how this puts us into context of the entire galaxy and the universe. I mean, it's really something which is quite extraordinary.
I think that's a wonderful idea. And what's the website people should visit? MarsOne.com. So that's Mars-or-1.com. An interesting thing happened here in Sydney, Australia a few years ago. We had a huge red dust storm. Dust from the outback, because we had a very dry spell, blew over Sydney and coated Sydney with this absolutely strange, eerie red dust. The sky was red, the atmosphere was red, the sun was looking red through the haze. And I looked out on this strange world and it crossed my mind, I wonder if I could tolerate this day after day after day, which is what you would be facing, of course, on Mars, because your outlook would be rather red.
Yeah, Mars definitely is red. That's the iron oxide, of course. But because the atmosphere is so thin, you need a hugely strong wind. I mean, I'm talking hundreds of kilometers an hour in order to lift that dust in any meaningful way and spread it around. So even though eventually storms do form, once in a while they form on Mars such that the whole place is encompassed in a cloud, it only really looks thick and foggy from orbit or from an astronomer who's pointing a telescope from Earth. On the surface of Mars, inhabitants there wouldn't be nearly as affected. The visibility wouldn't be all that affected because the atmosphere is so thin, it's difficult to pick up the dust. But it would be in many ways bleak compared to Earth, right? I mean, Mars has wonderful craters and valleys and mountains and deserts and all these different formations similar to Earth, but it does not have life. It doesn't have waterfalls. It doesn't have the same variety of cloud formations even. So in some ways it will be a little bit bleak, but I don't think it will be all that red and dusty all the time. I don't think that would be too much of a problem.
Although we do hear about, it's interesting you should say that the winds on Mars would have to be quite strong. We do see evidence from the rovers of the small tornadoes that go across the surface of Mars periodically. Indeed.
I mean, yeah, Mars in many ways, even though it's a smaller planet, has much, much more extreme geological features as well as weather patterns and weather characteristics. So, I mean, on Earth, 100-kilometer-hour wind is like that's serious, right? Yeah. But on Mars, it's actually not that serious, but they go much higher. You can get a 500-kilometer-hour wind probably at the surface of Mars at some point in time, although it would only feel like a 50-kilometer-hour wind.
Wow, it's
something like that.
It boggles the mind just to think about it. I mean, there are so many things to take into consideration. Assuming one gets through the selection process, then you're facing quite a long space voyage even before you get anywhere near Mars.
Yeah, it seems like MarsOne has chosen a transit of 210 days. Now, the lowest energy transfer that you can do, so this is using the least amount of fuel, which means the least expensive, is what's called a Hahnemann transfer. I think it's also called a low-energy transfer. But that takes about 260 days, or I think 258 or something like that. If you were to go burn a lot of fuel, you could also do a similar type of transfer in about 150 days. And anywhere between 150 and 260 depends on how much fuel you use. A 210-day one, I think, is a happy medium, and that's a long time period in space. You could knock it down to 180, and I imagine that if they get a significant amount of funding, they will reduce it from 210 to 180, but probably not much below that, because at some point in time you actually have the opportunity to return to Earth without any fuel at all. So that's like a free return mission, which is what Apollo 13 did when they tried to go to the moon. They wound up swinging around the moon and then coming back. You can do the same thing on the way to Mars, but only with certain transfer orbits. So I'm not sure if the 210 one that they have planned for 2022 is actually going to allow a free return. But I think if they get enough funding, then they will build that into the plan.
Well, that sounds to me like an attractive option. I think I'd sit in a space capsule for that amount of time to swing around Mars and have a good look and then head back to Earth. And I emphasize the head back to Earth. But, of course, from what I understand, this is really a one-way trip. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a one-way trip. I mean, it's a practical approach, and I agree with the design.
It's quite something. I suppose once the rocket launches off and you're heading out, that it's a bit late to change your mind then. And what sort of environment, what sort of living conditions would there be?
On Mars or en route?
Well, both, I guess.
I think on the way there it'll be similar to the International Space Station. I think there will be next to zero gravity, so there are options of introducing artificial gravity by tethering part of the rocket that launched the craft by a cable to the actual craft on which you travel, create a centrifugal force which then produces artificial gravity. But I don't think they're going to build that in just because it's not necessary. Anything that's not necessary is thrown out of the plans a priori. So not having gravity for 210 days is going to have effects on our bodies, right? That's going to be kind of crappy. But it's more or less the living quarters will be like being in a relatively small apartment with 3 other very interesting people, having relatively bleak food to eat, no showers. I mean, it'll be a very, very simple life, but that's sort of the necessity. Once you get to Mars, Well, now you have the option of actually leaving your habitats. There'll be a bunch of habitats waiting for us on the surface, and then when we get there, eventually we'll get towed to that region by some robotic rover. At least that's the plan. And worst case scenario, I suppose we would walk. But then we have the option of going in and out. And in addition to the hard HAB modules, they propose to, in advance, inflate some structures, which they can then cover with soil to protect from the radiation and so forth. And these inflated structures could be rather large, and we could use them to grow plants and to play ping pong, to live really, in shorts and a t-shirt, right? Because that'll only be possible indoors on Mars, at least for the next 5,000 to 10,000 years.
Well, let's take a very minor consideration into account here. What about oxygen?
Oxygen can be produced on Mars, like breathable oxygen can be produced on Mars from the carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere. That will be done in advance of us going there. I think they plan to have, I don't know how many lung capacity is worth, but a significant amount there so that we could live for a long time with that oxygen. But you can continually make it if you have a power source. Some solar panels would be enough even from the carbon dioxide that's in the Martian atmosphere already.
Good heavens, it's all been really, really well thought out, well planned. Besh, I don't know whether to wish you luck or not, because I quite enjoy your company. When we were together in the Czech Republic, we had a very a good time indeed, and what a wonderful festival that was. But I guess I will wish you luck, because what an incredible thing it would be to be one of the first humans to reach another planet. I guess it's an opportunity many people, as you say, thousands of people are jumping at.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. But I mean, again, I'd emphasize I really don't do this because I could be the first or whatever, and I want to be the first to see these things. Although those things are amazing, and when I do my research, I get that feeling once in a while where I see a piece of data and I'm like, I'm the first person, probably in the history of the world to realize this truth about biology, and that's very exciting. But really, it's more just I just think it's a proper fit for me, and it's my responsibility to do what I can, and this is what I think I'm apt to do. So. Well,
then, Besh, I really hope you're one of the first Martians.
Thank you very much.
Well, Besh Saab, all the best, and send back some Martian rock for me.
Okay. Send back some Martian rock.
Yeah.
That's $1 billion endeavor.
Oh, you'll do it for me, won't you?
Of course I will, Richard. Of course I will.
Thanks, Besh.
MarsOne will establish human settlement on Mars in 2023. In that year, the first group of 4 humans will land on Mars. Every 2 years after that, another group will join the settlement.
My first impression was that this is an extraordinary project by people with vision and imagination. But my first reaction was, I think like anyone who will be confronted with such an idea, this will never work. But now look and listen more closely. This is really something that can be achieved. I think this might become a most spectacular media event ever, watched by everyone on the globe.
1972 was the last time that humans walked on the moon. No human has ever gone as far as Mars. MarsOne has designed a mission that is much simpler than previous designs for Mars missions. The most significant simplification is that the crew is actually going to stay and live on Mars with the intention to remain there for the rest of their lives.
We will finance this mission by creating the biggest media event ever around it. Everybody in the world can see everything that will happen in the preparations and on Mars.
This is going to be a media spectacle. Big Brother will pale in comparison. The whole world will be watching and experience this journey.
MarsOne paid visits to major aerospace companies around the world. In these meetings, they confirmed to us that they can supply the required equipment. For every component, we have at least one potential supplier. All these suppliers have written letters of interest for MarsOne.
As for financing, this is going to be a private enterprise. Only private firms are going to contribute. No political mumbo-jumbo, no taxpayers' money will be involved. Only people like myself and many others who are enthusiastic about the program will contribute.
This is the plan. In 2016, a communication satellite and a supply mission will be sent to Mars. In 2018, a large planetary rover will be sent to Mars. It will drive around on Mars to find the best location for the settlement.
In 2020, living units, life support units, a rover, and more supplies will be sent to Mars. The rovers will prepare the settlement for human arrival. They will extract the inflatable section from the living unit. The life support unit will prepare the outpost for arrival of the humans. The crew will depart in September 2022, when the settlement is fully operational and habitable. They will be flying to Mars in a transit habitat with a lander attached to it.
7 months later, in April 2023, the humans will land on Mars, the next giant leap for mankind.
This project seems to be the only way to fulfill humanity's dream to explore outer space. It is going to be an exciting experiment. Let's get started.
MarsOne invites you to join us in this great adventure. For more information, visit mars-one.com.
Marit. Og jeg er Kristin, og vi vil tipse deg som norsk lytter av The Skeptic Zone om skeptikermiljøet i Norge.
Det finnes norske blogger og pubtreff og podcast, og foreningen Skepsis driver med ulike former for aktivisme.
Sentralt er skepsis.no, og her publiseres det dypt pløyende artikler, en kalender over skeptiske aktiviteter og lenker til andre skeptiske ressurser.
Skepsis-bloggen oppdateres jevnlig, og det diskuteres heftig på Skepsis-forumet, så stikk innom og delta du også.
Skepsis.no.
Hello, I'm Marit.
And I'm Kristin, and we want to let you know that there are lots of Norwegian skeptics for you to get to know.
There are blogs and pub meets and a podcast, and the Norwegian skeptics also do paranormal tests and consumer activism.
To find out more, Google Norwegian Skeptics or visit skepsis.no.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science news you need to know. This week in science, can comets create life? Small creatures see in slow-mo, and can a positive lifestyle make you live longer? Maybe, just maybe, the building blocks of life were created when comets and planets collided. A team in England fired steel balls into ice that has the same composition as comets. These violent impacts produced amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. Similar collisions between comets and planets could have eventually led to the first sparks of life on Earth. A new study has shown that smaller animals may see the world in slow motion. Researchers in Ireland studied a range of animals and measured how quickly their eyes processed light. They found that insects, birds and mice see more information in 1 second than larger animals, meaning they perceive time more slowly. The researchers even think this can be used by small animals to send signals to each other without larger predators seeing. You're listening to A Week in Science from RiAus, and now 4 science headlines in 30 seconds. Earwax from whales can be used to determine their lifetime exposure to ocean pollutants. Making positive lifestyle changes may increase the length of telomeres, that's the end of chromosomes that control aging, and may delay cell death. Spanish researchers have developed the first self-healing plastic that spontaneously repairs itself. And just like the 5 taste categories, bitter, sweet, etc., we have 10 basic categories of smell, one of which is popcorn. The Skynet celebrated its 2nd birthday this week, and we're not talking about the system from Terminator. The Skynet is a program that uses your computer during its quiet times to analyse astronomical data. If you want to help astronomers around the world unlock the secrets of the universe, check out theskynet.org. That's it for this A Week in Science. For more information on these and other science news stories, go to the RiAus website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter using the hashtag WeekInSci and like us on Facebook. I'm Paul Willis, and I'll catch you here next week.
The Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's 2nd oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the Publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian skeptics.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Dr Pamela Gay, what are you a doctor of again? How many letters after your name are there?
I have a PhD in astronomy from the University of Texas, and with more letters, I have a Bachelor of Science in Astrophysics. And if I don't like someone, I say astrophysics, but I like you, so I'll say astronomy.
You've got a beef with a few other scientific doctrines, for example, philosophy. I guess that's not really a scientific doctrine, but you don't like philosophers because they reckon if the Andromeda Galaxy falls in a forest and no one sees it, it's not really there.
There's times that philosophers are quite fun, like 4 a.m. at a pub. But when you're trying to teach science and you have someone from the back of the room, as has happened, asking, so if we were in India, what physical laws would we be learning? Well, physics is the same everywhere in the world. And multiculturalism is very important for understanding that people from different cultures all have the same potential to learn and discover. But that doesn't mean their science is any better or worse, because science is science and it should be the same for everyone, no matter what their philosophical leanings.
On a personal level, for someone who can understand the concept of Planck time as you can, which I find fascinating, why can't you get your head around an Excel spreadsheet in accounting?
I can get my head around an Excel spreadsheet and accounting. I just don't like to. The problem is I want to dedicate all my time to science, to learning about our universe, to helping other people be able to learn and discover. And when I'm doing accounting, I have to face the realities that I pay a $900 a month server bill, and I have to pay taxes that don't even cover the health insurance of my staff. Doing accounting, it's time that brings me away from science and brings me into the realities that if I want to do science, I have to figure out how to pay that $900 a month server bill in an economy that's really suffering right now.
You said that in an economy that's suffering but still has 2 wars going on with a possible third one on the side there, funding going to zero for most of the science funding? I imagined it was being reduced, but I had no idea that a lot of it was going to zero. Could you explain that? Because non-American listeners might not know this.
It's science education in particular that's going to zero. Under the president's proposed budget, the science education funding at NASA and many other organizations is being zeroed, and the money is being redistributed to the Department of Education, which specializes in formal education, to the National Science Foundation, but only to do research, to the Smithsonian museums to do outreach. These institutions don't have programs in place to ask people to apply for grants. And so programs like mine and so many others that are paid for out of NASA, out of the Department of Agriculture, out of the Department of Energy, all of our programs are going away. And a lot of very good educators and scientists are going to lose their jobs because science and education are getting completely split, and programs that combine the two no one knows how to fund.
Doubly annoying because it will also pit people against each other for what little funding there is as well, and that could cause a division within the group.
That's already happening. It used to be that the grants I apply for might have 100 or 200 people applying for maybe 20 or 30 grants. Now there's fewer dollars being spent, fewer grants being funded, and there might be 600 to 800 different groups applying. Layoffs are already starting. The money's going away, and it's hard. I personally am very worried I'm going to have to start laying off staff in the new year, and I'm trying everything I can to prevent that future.
Would something like the Chinese putting a man on the moon in 2020 spark things up a bit? Another Sputnik moment? Is that what's needed?
I don't know. What has me concerned is there's a mentality right now of meh, we don't care. It's all about infighting between the different political parties. It's people saying we don't need to do this because of that, and we don't need to do that because of this, and thus nothing getting done. And
is it perceived there's no votes in science?
I don't think that it's no votes in science. I actually took time to go up on the Hill in Washington and talk to my congressmen in the state of Illinois, and they were all deeply passionate. The problem is that there's now infighting over who gets what money, and at a certain point it starts to become a dominance fight. We are pack animals at our heart, and everyone wants to win, and the reality is the science educators are losing.
Is there a quick solution if we had Queen Pamela Gay in charge of the country? What would be the quick solution?
The quick solution to save today is a continuing resolution that says the U.S. will continue with last year's budget into the future. Beyond that, the long-term solution is we need people to understand that science and science education need to happen hand in hand, that the Department of Education is very good for making sure that we have consistent education across the United States. But if you want today's cutting-edge science to be in tomorrow's classroom, you need the science educators working with the scientists.
Have you had time to notice the state of science education here in Australia, or have people spoken to you about it at all?
I know from working with people at Swinburne University of Technology, especially their astrophysics and supercomputing facility, that astronomy here is still reasonably well funded. This is one of the few places that in many ways is giving the opportunity to grow.
We have a big sky.
You have a big dark sky. It's dark both in light and in radio waves. And you also have an education system that, like ours, is troubled in many ways, but by and large, people are still trying to learn what science really is.
You stated it there when you were talking earlier. Voyager has left the building. It's actually left the solar system, and it's about 10,000 miles an hour it's travelling at. Is that right?
It's outside of the solar system. It's carrying a record on it that contains the sound of a human heartbeat.
And Chuck Berry.
But what I love is that human heartbeat is while someone's thinking of the concept of love. Wow. And so someone's beating heart filled with love has left our solar system.
Is it near the Oort cloud?
It's outside of the solar system. So it's the New Horizons mission that it's on its way to the Kuiper Belt.
So it's actually past the Oort cloud? Sorry, I'm a bit confused.
The Oort cloud is ill-defined and no one can exactly say where it is.
Except that the aliens from Independence Day, that was when we first saw them when they came out of the Oort cloud.
Yes, but as a scientist, we've only detected one possible Oort cloud object, and that's the object Sedna. All the rest of our understandings of the Oort cloud come from mathematical modeling. So we have good reason to believe it's there. It explains comets very well, but I don't feel comfortable saying that we've definitely gone all the way past all the rogue pieces of ice that might be orbiting our solar system. But in terms of how we measure our solar system based on the sun pushing out on the material around our solar system, Voyager has left the building before it launched, left the atmosphere, left the planets, left the solar system.
I want to ask you about an object that I am fascinated by, and that's the North Pole of Neptune, the square object that keeps turning up there and not turning up there. Can it possibly be an alien artifact?
No.
Well, that was an easy question. Thank you very much, Dr. Pamela Gay.
Thank you so much for having me on.
But we are having a night about astronomy tonight. Is there anything you're particularly interested to hearing about tonight about astronomy?
I'd just like to know that everything Pamela learned at university was wrong.
Oh, yeah?
That's what she says herself.
Wow. And is that because it was a while ago and everything's changed?
I don't think she's that old. I think it's like 20 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
So,
are you a fan of her podcast?
I am.
And what are you here for tonight, astronomy-wise?
I just come to hopefully meet Pamela and hear what she's got to say.
Oh, right. And you're a fan of her blogging and her podcast?
Definitely a podcast. I only found skepticism through Astronomy Cast. So, yeah.
So did they say something, or did they lead you to the path of thinking, critical thinking? How did you get into it through the podcast?
I think they might have had Steve on the show, or maybe just talked about it. I can't quite remember, but I can remember definitely then going and finding Skeptic's Guide and, finding everything else from there.
And actually, what are your favourite skeptical podcasts? Everyone has a slightly different list. I've only just recently discovered Skeptics with a K out of Liverpool.
Very good.
Funny guys, yeah.
Yep. Incredulity, very funny as well. Same guys.
Yeah. And the questions on that are so tough sometimes, aren't they?
Yes, well, I think they might get a little bit of a heads up on that.
Oh, yeah. But well, of course, we've got Aran down there on the floor with the big Skeptics T-shirt giveaway. Have you been getting a T-shirt for yourself?
I have a few.
Now, what colours have you gone with?
Light blue, black, and I'm hoping to get one of the blue ones over there as well.
For Christmas gifts to the family, is it?
Oh, for me.
Oh, you're not dressed unless you're wearing a skeptical T-shirt. I've always said that.
True, very true.
And she just got 2 extra ones.
Now, most of this stuff has come from your attic. What have you got in your attic?
I'd rather not talk about it. Police might do something about it if I say too much.
You're the cat weasel of skeptical clothing.
Actually, I think it's I'm not sure what a cat weasel is, but I've got.
Cat weasel.
Sorry.
Wasn't he a very dodgy wrestler?
That's correct.
That's right.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Because I was thinking a cat weasel would actually be a good thing, because I actually have rats there roaming around between the shirts.
Are any of these T-shirts rat-gnawed?
Nope.
Rat pooped?
Nope. They've been well isolated from the rats.
Okay. Well, you've been talking to Aran direct from his basement. Now, sir, line up. You want some T-shirts, do you?
Thank you, Maynard. I'm going to go for my second round of Tam T-shirts.
What are you using them as? Tea towels or something?
No. I'm just going to sham the fact that I wasn't at Tam.
Oh, that's right. Because you can wear it and go, I was there. It was fantastic. Yeah. That's okay.
Hey, fellow skeptics. I'm Trent, the co-host of a podcast called Seeds of Doubt, and creator of a new project called Dropfox. Dropfox is dedicated to providing new music for your radio show or podcast, and to help support your cause through the sound waves. The song you're listening to is called Keep Looking Up, and can be heard on the podcast Oddments by College of Curiosity. If you need some new music, check me out. Facebook.com/Dropfox. That's DROPFOX.
Your stars for September 2013 with our astrologer Dr. Duath Ekaf. Aries. Flying around the world backwards through the international dateline does wonders for your astrology. If you play your cards right, you can have 2 birthdays, or none at all. If this applies to you, read this twice, or ignore it altogether. Gemini. My dentist always works by the stars. In fact, he works outside at night. This can make for some interesting and unexpected fillings and extractions. Your lucky teeth are the ones still in your head. Cancer. Are you a one-trick pony? Maybe you're just an ass. In any case, your stars tell me you just botch everything up. For a more positive reading, send $49.99 to my P.O. Box. Leo. Be careful walking outside today, as it'll be raining cats and dogs. If you step in a poodle... Oh, hang on. Sorry, I was reading my joke book from 1965. Still, makes about as much sense as astrology. Virgo. Never air your dirty laundry in public unless you want people to giggle at your undies. Cover your bases and your backside, and for that, you'll need your undies, which should be clean by now. Libra. Drinking to forget never works. I remember the time I drank to forget about whatever it was, it didn't work. Also, drinking to forget never works. Scorpio. If other people can hear the ringing in your head, you're in more trouble than you thought. Keep your friends close and your enemies very, very far away. Ophiuchus. This week you'll see eye to eye with people of your own height. I wonder if you'll hear ear to ear at the same time. Sagittarius. Mars is in your 7th house. You have 7 houses? You have a house big enough for a planet? Capricorn. Take a deep breath, but make sure it's your own. People born in your star sign are known for their heavy breathing, especially after running. Aquarius. The stars are unclear for you this month owing to the interference from Reiki energy. Please use your aura, or something else, to contact your spirits. Jinn is a nice spirit. Pisces. If a tabbied cat crosses your path, bend over and give it a little pat. It might not be your lucky day, but the cat will appreciate it. Those stars come to you courtesy of the Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. Subscribe online at www.skeptics.com.au. Physical and digital subscriptions available.
In a world where the truth is a matter of opinion, where messages are received from beyond the grave, and reason is sidelined for magical thinking, only 3 men stand between the truth and a postmodernist abyss.
What date is it? 7th, 8th? 7th, 8th?
This is impressive.
Are these artist impressions?
They're not. They're photographs of Chinese lanterns. It's not.
We are not well researched.
Yeah, because...
Good God, we're full
We
of
don't discuss cryptozoology on this show very often, because we don't know anything about it.
That's true, that is true. The price gets lower and lower and lower, and then he hits a ceiling?
It's a ceiling from the room below.
Skeptics with a K from the Merseyside Skeptic Society. Find us on iTunes. Or, don't.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. And thank you to all those people who chip in less than $1 a week, or a bit more if you want, at skepticzone.tv. It certainly helps keep the show going. In fact, without those donations, the show just wouldn't go on at all. Very much appreciated. Don't forget to book your tickets for the National Skeptics Convention, nationalskepticsconvention.org, and I'll see you there in November. And you can keep up with the Skeptic Zone and my tweets, Twitters, whatever, at Skeptic Zone. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.